It's terror time. Argentina is a country wrapped in mysteries, where legends seem to spring from every corner, fueled by imagination and collective fear. These stories, passed down from generation to generation, have woven a cultural mantle that blends the real with the supernatural, enveloping those who hear them in a unique, almost magical atmosphere. Some of these tales are so chilling that they stay etched in memory, leaving a sense of unease that lingers long after hearing them. In this story, we will explore a first-hand experience of a truck driver traveling along Route 9, a road already famous for its unsettling anecdotes. This man, accustomed to long hours and the silence of the night, faced an event that would change his life forever. As he traveled the road under a torrential downpour and overwhelming darkness, he could not imagine that he was about to encounter something that would defy all logic and explanation. Prepare to dive into this real story, where the everyday transforms into a terrifying scene and legends come to life. Route 9 not only connects destinations on the map, it also holds secrets that blur the lines between the world we know and what we fear. This story transports us to a dark period in Argentina, the time of the military coup. In those years, the country was marked by a climate of tension and constant control. Main roads like the iconic Route 9 were monitored by military posts at every access point. Travel, especially at night, took on an unsettling tone, not only because of the danger of checkpoints, but also because of the silence and isolation that surrounded the road. Loreto, a small town in the province of Santiago del Estero, becomes the starting point of this disturbing experience. From there, the truck driver set out on his journey to Santa Fe, a trip that, in theory, should have been routine. However, Route 9, with its endless stretch and reputation for accidents and unexplained events, already had a reputation that made it feared by many. The context of this story combines the weight of a turbulent historical period with the mystery that has always surrounded certain places in the collective imagination. In those nights where rain and darkness were constant companions, the boundaries between the real and the unknown seemed to blur, setting the stage for something far more terrifying than any military checkpoint. The night grew even more threatening when a torrential storm began to unleash its fury on Route 9. The raindrops hit the windshield so forcefully that he could barely see a few meters ahead. The truck driver, aware of the danger of continuing to drive under such conditions, decided to slow down and find a safe place to stop. Finally, he found a stretch of roadside wide enough to park his truck. There, with the lights on and the engine off, he patiently waited for the rain to ease. The sound of rain and wind filled the air, while the surrounding gloom enveloped him. Suddenly, something caught his attention. Near the truck, a large tree stood as a solitary figure against the darkness. Something in one of its branches was moving strangely, swaying with the wind. At first, it seemed like just a piece of black fabric, perhaps a piece of plastic blown by the storm. But there was something unsettling about the way it fluttered, almost as if it had a life of its own. Intrigued and somewhat disturbed, the truck driver turned on the high beams to see more clearly. What the light revealed made him stop breathing. It wasn't a piece of fabric, but a human figure. A woman crouched on a branch seemed to be watching him. The black fabric was part of her clothing, and her presence in the middle of that storm, in such a remote place, was more than disconcerting. A chill ran down the truck driver's spine. Something inside him told him that this figure didn't belong to this world, and although he didn't know it yet, that would be the first act of an experience that would mark him forever. The truck's light fully illuminated the figure, revealing a sight that froze the truck driver's blood. It was a woman. Her tattered black clothing moved as if alive under the lash of the wind. But the most terrifying thing was her face. She had no eyes, only two black sockets that seemed to absorb the light. Her pale, skin-tight appearance gave her a cadaverous look, as if death itself had manifested on that stormy night. For a moment that seemed eternal, the woman remained still, watching him from the tree branch. Then, with an agile and unnatural jump, she descended to the ground and began walking towards the truck. Her gait was erratic, almost as if she were floating, and each step seemed accompanied by a gust of wind that made the nearby branches creak. The truck driver, paralyzed by fear, could barely move. His mind struggled to find a rational explanation, but there was none. All he could do was make sure the doors were securely closed. As the figure approached, the truck driver managed to make out more details. Her hands were bony, with long, sharp nails, and her smile, if it could be called that, was an unnatural grimace that mocked his terror. It was then that his survival instinct took over. He started the truck's engine with trembling hands, floored the accelerator, and sped away from the place. With a broken voice, he described the emaciated woman and how she had appeared inside his truck, causing the accident. To his surprise, one of the soldiers shared a testimony that left everyone stunned. Hours earlier, a couple who had passed through the same military checkpoint reported seeing a woman in the middle of the road. According to them, the figure appeared out of nowhere, forcing them to swerve sharply. Just a meter later, their car started malfunctioning inexplicably until it stopped completely. Though they managed to restart the vehicle, fear accompanied them for the rest of the journey. As Carlos processed this revelation, a blood-curdling scream interrupted the conversation. It came from a nearby location, about 30 meters away in the bushes. The others pointed their spotlights in the direction of the sound, and what they saw left them breathless. A hunched, emaciated figure, the same woman Carlos had described, was there, staring at them from the darkness. Her body seemed twisted unnaturally, and her presence emanated a palpable sense of threat. When the lights illuminated her, the woman let out a louder scream and began running toward the bushes, disappearing into them as if vanishing into the night itself. Everyone fell into absolute silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. Both the soldiers and the rescuers, men accustomed to extreme situations, were completely stunned. That figure was not just a hallucination or a trucker's invention. It was real, and its appearance confirmed that Route 9 held something much darker than anyone could imagine. The event experienced by Carlos left deep scars, both physical and emotional. Although he survived the accident, the memory of that emaciated woman haunted him far beyond that fateful night. Every detail of her eyeless face, her mocking laugh, and the cold touch of her hand was etched into his memory like an impossible shadow to dispel. Since then, Carlos never traveled alone at night again, and every time he drove through a desolate route, a chill ran down his spine, reminding him of how vulnerable he had felt at that moment. The psychological impact of the event was undeniable. Despite attempts to rationalize what had happened, questions remained unanswered. What was that entity? Why did it appear on that stretch of Route 9? And above all, how many others had encountered that woman before him, perhaps with even more tragic consequences? Among the rescuers and soldiers, theories began to emerge. Some believed it could be a wandering spirit, a victim of some fatal accident on that road, doomed to roam among vehicles as an echo of her tragedy. Others spoke of ancient legends, stories of spectral women linked to places of death and desolation. Some even suggested that this entity could be responsible for the numerous inexplicable accidents that occurred on Route 9, reinforcing its sinister reputation. For Carlos, none of these explanations brought comfort. The only thing certain to him was that he had experienced something that defied all logic. Although he survived, something inside him had changed forever. The experience taught him that danger on the roads doesn't always come from potholes or detours. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing is what we can't see coming or understand. Carlos' final reflection, and that of those who heard his story, was clear. Traveling alone at night can be more than just a test of endurance and loneliness. It can become an encounter with the unknown. Route 9, with its dark reputation and unsettling stories, remains a reminder that there are places where the real world and the supernatural seem to coexist, leaving those who cross their paths marked forever. Carlos's tale is not just another story in the vast repertoire of Argentine urban legends. It is a testament to how these narratives intertwine with real experiences, creating a bridge between the tangible and the inexplicable. In a country where legends have been passed down from generation to generation, each story carries with it a fragment of mystery, fear, and above all, an implicit warning. There are forces that operate beyond our understanding. Experiences like Carlos remind us of the importance of sharing and preserving these stories. Beyond the fear they generate, they are a reflection of our culture, our beliefs, and our collective fears. Stories like these not only send shivers down your spine, but they also unite those who hear them, sparking a common interest in the unknown. Just as Carlos decided to share what he lived through, perhaps out of the need to free himself from the weight of that memory, it is also our responsibility to keep these stories alive. Listening to them, sharing them, and passing them on to new generations not only helps preserve oral tradition, but also strengthens our connection to what it means to be human. The desire to comprehend the incomprehensible. And now the invitation is open. If you've ever experienced something similar or know a story that sends chills down your spine, don't hesitate to share it. In doing so, not only do you preserve a fragment of our folklore, but you also contribute to that eternal conversation between the real world and the unknown. Because deep down, we all carry that curiosity about the secrets that the night and lonely roads guard so jealously. Carlos, after that night, was never the same. Although he physically recovered from the accident's injuries, the emotional scars never fully disappeared. Every time he heard the sound of wind hitting the windows or the branches creaking in the darkness, his mind would flash back to that moment on Route 9. The image of the emaciated woman with her empty sockets and twisted smile became a ghostly presence that haunted him in his dreams and sometimes even in his waking moments. Over time, Carlos decided to share his story with other truckers and travelers who frequented Route 9. He did it not only to free himself from the burden of that experience, but also to warn them about the dangers that could lurk in the darkest nights. Many listened with skepticism, but others, those who had also experienced inexplicable things on that road, nodded knowingly. After all, Route 9 had a reputation that went beyond the normal. It was a place where stories of ghosts, apparitions, and strange phenomena seemed to multiply over the years. Among the stories circulating, one resonated particularly strongly: the tale of the Lady of the Road. According to various versions, she was a woman who had lost her life in an accident decades ago, and since then her spirit wandered the road, searching for something or someone. Some said she was a lost soul, trapped between two worlds, while others believed she was a malevolent entity that fed off the fear of travelers. The truth was, regardless of the explanation, the presence of this figure had become a living legend, warning for those who ventured on Route 9 at night. Carlos, although he tried to rationalize what had happened, couldn't help but wonder if the woman he had seen was indeed the Lady of the Road. Was it possible that their encounter was just a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? The thought that this entity might be responsible for other accidents and disappearances in the area deeply troubled him. How many others had crossed her path and not been lucky enough to survive and tell the tale? As the years went by, Carlos' story became part of the folklore of Route 9. Travelers who passed through there at night did so with a little more caution, and some even carried charms or performed rituals to protect themselves from the unknown. The road, with its long, desolate stretches and eerie atmosphere, remained a place where the real and the supernatural seemed to intertwine in an inexplicable way. Thus, Carlos's story became part of the countless legends that populate the collective imagination of Argentina, a country where the mysterious and the inexplicable are part of the landscape, where lonely roads and dark nights hold secrets that we may never fully understand. And as future generations continue to tell these stories, the fear and fascination with the unknown will remain alive, reminding us that sometimes the boundaries between the real and the supernatural are thinner than we think. Be careful. Lock the door, or maybe better not. Take care, my shadows.